5 minutes.
Thanks, Ciarán Minister. As you know, the present Garda Act explicitly allows the government to make appointments at superintendent level and above. There's no specification of any qualifications or any criteria. Literally, the government can appoint whoever they like without any accountability to anybody. And added into that, you have very flimsy grounds on which the government of the day can also seek to remove some of those senior officers that Deputy Ross has at the centre of this bill. So is it really any wonder that we have such a dysfunctional system as has been exposed over the past period when such a system prevails at the higher echelons? Because it's perfectly understandable that anybody who wants to rise to those ranks in order to get there has to basically curry favour with the political establishment of the day in order that they might end up on the right side to get the nod when the time is right. And obviously the other side of the equation is once they get there, the tendency is to reward their masters, to reward the person who put them there in the first place, and that is incredibly unhealthy in any system which purports to be democratic. Now, we made the point many times during the recent controversies that a lot of what happened couldn't have happened without the dysfunctional relationship, a lawful one, between the former Minister for Justice and the former Garda Commissioner. It's not that the former Minister of Justice did nothing when he got the complaints. He did. He went to the Commissioner, asked him what was the story, and the Commission said, "Don't worry about it, Alan, nothing to see here, nothing to worry about," and the former Minister said, "That's grand." And basically that was a hugely contributing issue to the problems that we had. And I think the politicised nature of the relationship between the government, the Garda Commissioner being only accountable to the Minister, was very much epitomised by the prime-time debacle with the former Minister revealing information about Deputy Wallace in order to basically politically point score. Information which couldn't have come by accidentally, which only could have been sought by a trawl, in essence, at the behest of the Minister. And obviously Deputy Shatter has been found guilty of breaking data protection law in that regard, but I think it's worth making the point in that way. At the heart of this bill is the issue of accountability, and that is one that we have all focused hugely on. Nobody disputes that that is necessary. The government's response to that is that finally we will get a Garda independent authority which will oversee the functioning of the force. I would put it to you, Minister, that that is not enough, that if we simply put that at the top of the force as it is now and rely on those who are presently in management positions continuing to rule the roost and do not have a change mechanism for appointments, then the problems will replicate themselves. Because when we say what's necessary is a Patton-style commission, we don't think that the Patton inquiry was brilliant and there's no problems inside the police force in Northern Ireland. There absolutely is. But we need to go back to the drawing board and look at what are the objectives of a modern police service. It's completely different than when the Garda Síochána were selected. How should people be recruited to that force? Because the top echelons set the scene, but those top echelons then are very influential at picking the fellas further down the ladder in terms of who can go forward for promotion or not. And I think all of these issues like recruitment and training must be addressed if we're to get an acceptable police force. Now, what is politicised policing? And I tried to raise the issue this afternoon with the Taoiseach in relation to the policing of Corrup, and he either was unable or didn't understand the point or unwilling to answer it, because he tried to divert the issue into talking about the merits or otherwise of the Shell project, when the question that was being posed to him was about the policing of that. And he tried to say about local people protesting as if there was a difference between what Minister Shatter used to call tourist protesters and locals. The point that was being made is there were no protesters. These were local residents who got in the way of a multinational. And the idea that on Garda Síochána would be basically an organisation for hire to go out and do the behest of a multinational, 30 guards in the middle of the night to intimidate an elderly woman and her husband in order to get a pipe down a narrow road when there was nobody standing in the way or objecting to that process going on. There is something utterly wrong in that, and all human rights organisations have pinpointed those problems exist and they need to be looked at and they need to be overcome. I think this bill is a positive contribution. I think it does bring our attention on the top echelons of the force, and I would end by saying that we have been on the record and will do so again to say that the idea that those in the senior ranks of the Gardaí now can be part of a reconstituted force, very, very few of them will make the grade, given how many of them have been involved in some of the most appalling miscarriages of justice and in bad practice that they have stood over, and I think that needs to be absolutely looked at.